It's more than just maintaining dollar dominance. So let me go back. Do you remember when the wall came down in Berlin? And I'm in Washington. I'm around all the people who are running the government. And there's all these conversations. Oh my God, we can unify Germany. It'll take 10 years. We have to have treaties and conferences. And they're envisioning all sorts of complicated stuff. And the head of Germany simply offered a very sweet premium for the East German currency to come into the Deutsch Mark. Bam. Everybody swaps to Deutsch Mark, company unified overnight through the currency. Imagine you wake up in a world, and I don't think this is going to happen, but it could. So you know about a tender in the stock market. One company tenders for the stock of another company, buys that company's stock, and then takes over the company, right? So it's a takeover. If you go out the United States and you get everybody to move off of their local currency and into stablecoins financing the U.S. Treasury market, you implode all their local economies and banking systems, but essentially they all become a form of citizen of the dollar system. I mean, basically, you shift their sovereignty from one country to another. You are tendering for 8 billion people in the open market. But wait, keep thinking, because it's not just getting the money into the dollars. Now you can do surveillance on all those people, and now you can freeze, block, or burn their transactions. So you have more power over them than their government may have. We're going to see countries trying to block our internet access or, our mobile payment systems. And we're going to see countries, around the world outlaw, you can't use a US stablecoin, things like that. So the war is on, but countries are now going to have to compete one by one for their citizens to use their currency. I think this is going to be the biggest cluster, in the history of the world. I think this is going to be a complete mess. I just spent 44 hours flying to Amsterdam in a flight setup that should have been 20 hours. Planes were breaking down. And the problem in that system was that everybody was rebooked and their luggage was rebooked by automatic programming. And you had a group of humans, both the ground crews, the flight crews, and the customers, trying to deal with a technocratic automatic programming software that had gone mad and was not making any sense. And so a great deal of time was wasted. People were very frustrated. That's just for air flight travel. When you take everybody's financial transactions and you throw them into a system that is freezing, blocking, manipulating, and there's no one to call, there's no customer support, there's no human intercession, I just can't imagine the mess you're going to make. I think this is going to be the greatest cluster, in the history of the world. I think they're a couple of years away from getting the basic infrastructure, underground cables, data centers, getting it all working. I think they are a couple of years away from getting the digital ID system really tight. I think they're moving very quickly on programmable money, particularly the stocks and bonds and the bank deposits. And so that is moving very fast. I think the banks announcing that they're going to put bank deposits on the distributed ledger, that is frightening because it potentially takes away one of the most valuable alternatives to money on a distributed ledger. The ACH system, the bank deposit system, checks, that's an alternative to program. That's non-programmable money. Yes, it can be surveilled, but it's only got a manual third lock. It's not an automated lock system. And if the banks move everything onto an automated lock, that is really scary. Now, the fact that the stocks and bonds are doing it at the same time as the banks means everything's moving to a distributed ledger. Everything can be made programmable on a distributed ledger and can be misused, in these various ways. So we've just seen a dramatic shift in the last 2 months. But the Clarity Act is still not passed. So how fast can they go? It depends on how much pain they're willing to deliver. They understand where financial liquidity comes from. And they understand if you suck all that money out of local economies and out of the tax base, you implode the economy. Instead of lending money to local enterprise, if the banking system is instead delivering all the money into the treasury market and the only people who has money locally are people who get a welfare check or a government contract, then private enterprise shrinks to nothing. Particularly in small businesses, depending on bank and credit. So you've just massively deflated the local economy and the tax base of many municipalities and governments. And then you're talking about, if you look at all the debt that they carry at the state and local level, when you implode that tax base, bam, you implode all that debt. It's very complex. And different people have different baskets of situation. But I think you are going to see generally across the board a much lower quality of life and lower life expectancy in the general population and significantly less family wealth. I think a lot of it could be inflated away. Now, the corollary to that is we are now seeing rolling out technology which could dramatically improve all sorts of productivity and material well-being, but I have a hard time seeing the current leadership allow that to trickle down to the general population. So I think we're looking at lower freedom of movement and speech and life. Now, the question is, can 5 to 10% of us lead a pushback that will be effective? And if we do, then it's going to be a very, very different picture. And that's the picture where the new technology can be a huge blessing. So, it's an age-old question. It's a spiritual war. Is it going to be ruled by divine intelligence or demonic? And that's going to be decided one person in one home at a time. So that pushback is using cash. That pushback is keeping analog alive. That pushback is changing the laws or instituting laws so that people have a right to a non-digital life. That pushback is putting into guardrails on programmable money. And that pushback is doing everything we can in our life to stop building the prison and stop financing the prison, and instead shifting our money to finance and build the world we want to live in. So Americans are pouring their retirement savings into building these data centers, and I think they don't even realize it. So what you want to do is all the actions you can take, but you want to take them in a way that empowers you. So one example that I always use is getting a good bank where you have a good relationship, and if the FBI call up and say you're a domestic terrorist, they'll just start laughing. So there are millions of things you can do, but you have to do them in a way that decreases your enemy's power and increases your power, because you need more power to deal with the situation. So cash is for transactions, gold is for store of value. In my opinion, gold is one of the great assets of the world, and gold has positive and negative. So if you measure your value in dollars, the price of gold can be volatile. If you measure your value in ounces, it's not volatile at all. But I think gold, if you look at how gold has performed over the last 20 years, but over the last 5,000 years, we have a great wrap up on, 5,000 years of gold history. The great thing about gold is it's simple. You can understand it, and there's no third-party dependency if you store it on your own. I think the most important decision you have to make when you buy gold and before you buy it is you have to know where you're going to put it. So I have to tell you that I was an investment advisor for 10 years, and the number one way my clients lost money on gold, they forgot where they put it. And so we did a third quarter 2024 wrap up where we went through all of our links on gold and silver. And the one thing we stress again and again is get yourself educated before you buy gold, because you need to know. I divide gold investment between a core position and an investment position. The core position is central bank insurance, and it's there for the worst case. And everybody should have a core position. If you don't have one, you need to get it as soon as you understand where you're going to keep it. And it's an insurance policy. It's not an investment, but then an investment position depends on when you're buying, exactly what you're buying, where you're keeping it. And it very much depends on the investment cycle that we're in. So, and I think right now gold is attractive both as a core position and as an investment position. And I think everybody with some exception should have some in their portfolio. I was one of those people who, I thought litigation or fighting was a complete waste of time. And I grew up in a world where you didn't fight City Hall. You might try and lead City Hall and persuade it in another direction, but you never fight it. And I went through a period where twice I had my fortune pulled out from under me, but basically lawlessness and dirty tricks. And so the second time I was in 1998, I was offered a quickie settlement, but they were going to keep my money. And I decided, look, there's a line between, liberty and slavery, and this is the line. And so I decided, I'm not putting up with this. And the other thing is I've been trained always to believe that I was part of a people who tried to lead a civilization. And I'll never forget realizing in 1998 what their plan was. And I said, this is going to fail. And I want no part of it. So I'm going to go out in the wilderness and see if I can find some other people who want to come up with a better plan, because this plan's going to fail. And what I've had to do since then is watch the United States steadily decline as a culture, as a financial system, as a country. And it's horrible for me, but I'm working with people all over the world who are trying to do something about it, and build a world where if we make money, we can keep it. The problem is I can't be free unless everybody is. And the problem we have is we have a secret governance system that is wreaking havoc with the monetary policies and now want to wreak havoc with fiscal policies. And I've just decided to do something about it. And I can't think of anything I'd rather do. What am I going to do? Build another fortune so they can steal it again? That's the tragedy. I'm watching all these people in the crypto space building these fortunes, knowing that it can be stolen from them just like that. They're building the train tracks to steal all the money they're making. Why would you do that? There's a great scene in Godfather 2, I think, where the Godfather is explaining why he went into crime and he said he didn't want to be a patsy on the string, some expression like that.